Dear radio friends, tonight on this program, Torah in the Home, we shall speak about the Yontif of Chanukah that we have the merit to be able to celebrate this year. And tonight is the third light of the Chanukah lamps, and I'm sure that you have lit it already, and if not, you still have time to do so. And at the beginning of the Chanukah Licht festival, that is, the celebration begins with the brochas. The first night we say 3 blessings, the second night we say 2, and this we continue throughout the 8 days of Chanukah. One of the brochas of the blessings that we say that we give thanks to God, she'osa nisim la'avoseinu, that He did miracles to our ancestors, bayomim hohem, in those days, bisman hazeh, in this time. Some people will ask, if He did a miracle to our ancestors, what does this mean to us? And the answer, dear friends, is a very simple one. In Jewish life, a miracle to our parents is our miracle as well. The generations in Jewish life are not severed one from another, and therefore the miracle to our forefathers is our miracle as well. And in this celebration, there is manifested also the meaning of the eternity of our people, who do not forget the grace of God in all times, because we are united with the past as well as with the future to come. And it is all one that brings to our recognition that we have much for which to be grateful to God, and that is the purpose of the festival of Chanukah, that our sages have designated these days, as the Talmud says, B'halelu b'hoido, to give praise and to give thanks to Almighty God. My dear friends, at every festival it is customary to tell the story, and so today too I shall not deviate from this custom, and in short repeat the story of the festival of Chanukah. It was about 2,300 years ago that Alexander of Macedonia ruled the entire civilized world around the Mediterranean Sea. Jewish tradition tells us that he held Israel and its religion in esteem, and in the land of Israel peace reigned. For 12 years Alexander was the ruler. Then he died at the age of 33, and his generals divided the empire. Egypt became a separate monarchy, and Syria had its own emperor. And then for another 125 years, Israel remained at peace. Its people lived in comfort. They were able to reap the harvest, to supply their needs from the soil. They tended the vineyards. They raised their flocks. They lived faithfully by the Torah, were merited to have the Holy Temple, which was the heart and center of Jewish religion, in Jerusalem, in serenity, and in magnificent nobleness. And then Syria conquered Israel, but did permit the Jewish people to live in peace. And then we jump for another long period of time, and we speak about the Jewish people who lived 2,000 years ago and as a part of the Syrian Empire. This was dominated by the Syrian rulers of the dynasty of the Seleucidae. In order to relate the story that led up to Chanukah, we must begin with Antiochus III, the king of Syria. He had waged war with King Ptolemy of Egypt over the possession of the land of Israel. Antiochus III was victorious, and the land of Israel was annexed to his empire. At the beginning of his reign, he was favorably disposed toward the Jews and gave them some privileges. Later on, however, when he was beaten by the Romans and compelled to pay heavy taxes, the burden fell upon the various peoples of his empire, who were forced to furnish the heavy gold punishment that was imposed upon him by the Romans. When Antiochus died, his son Seleucus IV took over, and further oppressed the Jews. Now, added to the troubles from the without, there was the grave peril that threatened Judaism from within. Now, the Jewish people could never give up their faith in God and accept the idol worship of the Syrians and Greeks, but yet the Syrians and Greeks did not cease to try to force themselves upon the Jewish people. The way in which this was done was to force their manner of religion or philosophy upon the Jewish people. In time, there came an emperor or the king, Antiochus Epiphanes. The Epiphanes meant the God chosen or the God beloved, the illustrious. He became the king of Syria, but soon the Jews of that generation were calling him Epiphanes, which means the madman. And this is really named by a historian of his time, Polybius, who called him madman as a more suitable expression of the character of this idiot. He believed that he was the Greek deity Zeus returned to earth in human form, and so he pictured himself on his coins. Ambition burned within him. Like Alexander, he would rule the entire Mediterranean world, he hoped. He would make all follow the Greek religion, and cause everyone to bow down to the Greek gods in whom he believed so passionately that he wanted the entire world to recognize it. And therefore he wished that everywhere Greek culture would flourish. As a ruler of Israel, Antiochus sent his sharp orders there too, that the Greek gods must be worshipped, Greek culture must become an important part of the life in Israel. Now there were Jews at that time who were eager to obey. They seemed to think that the Torah and the Jewish faith was too old-fashioned for them, and gladly they took to Hellenism, which is, in essence, Greek religion and culture, which in our expression would be to be modern and up-to-date, and not antiquated as they looked upon the Jewish religion. In Jerusalem itself, they built a Greek-style gymnasium so that the Kohanim, the high priests, could go there for sports rather than serve in the holy temple. Now he wanted to unify his kingdom through the medium of a common religion and culture, and therefore he tried to root out the individualism of the Jews by suppressing all the Jewish customs. He removed the Orthodox and the righteous high priest Yochanan from the temple in Jerusalem, and in his place he installed his brother Joshua, who loved to call himself by the Greek name of Jason, for he was a member of the Hellenist party. He used his high office to spread more and more of the Greek customs among the priests. Joshua, or Jason, was later replaced by another man, Menelaus, who had promised the king to bring in more money than Jason did. When Yochanan, the former high priest, protested against the spread of the Hellenist influence in the Holy Temple, the ruling high priest hired murderers who assassinated Yochanan. Antiochus was at that time engaged in a successful war against Egypt, but messengers from Rome arrived and commanded him to stop the war. He had to yield, and he called it off. But meanwhile in Jerusalem a rumor spread that a serious accident befell Antiochus. Thinking that he was dead, the people rebelled against Menelaus, and the treacherous high priest fled together with his friends. But Antiochus was not dead, and in his going to try to conquer Egypt, he was successful, and he became very angry at Israel for what they did against his representative. He marched through Jerusalem as he returned. His soldiers slew people right and left until thousands were murdered as a result of this act that the Jewish people took. In his anger, he took the temple's sacred treasures, such as the inner altar and the menorah, and he left Jerusalem in ruins. The tyrannical king sent new orders to all in his realm: worship only the Greek gods, including himself as Zeus, or die. All must live now by Greek culture alone. Other nations obeyed. The Jews remained loyal to the Torah. And enraged, Antiochus sent soldiers to place a statue of Zeus on the temple altar, and for pigs to swine to be sacrificed to it. And when the soldiers found Jews observing the Torah, they slew them. They found women lighting Sabbath candles, men in tefillin praying. All were annihilated. It is told that a widow named Hannah was caught keeping the Shabbos with her 7 sons, brought before the Syrian commander. Her sons refused to disown the Torah or bow to a Greek idol, and one by one they died bravely for their faith. And the grief-stricken mother then did away with herself. The tragic tale became part of Jewish tradition, symbolizing the woe of the time and yet the loyalty to Torah, which has always illuminated our lives. And the Syrian soldiers brought to Israel not Greek culture, but bloodshed. Everywhere, the soldiers erected altars to their idols and forced the Jews to offer sacrifices. One day, the henchmen of Antiochus arrived in the village of Modin, where Matisyahu the old priest lived. When the Syrian officer built an altar in the marketplace of the village and demanded of Matisyahu to offer sacrifices to the Greek gods, he replied, "I, my sons, and my brothers are determined to remain loyal to the covenant which our God made with our ancestors." And thereupon a Hellenistic Jew approached the altar to offer a sacrifice. Matisyahu grabbed his sword and killed him. This was the first man that Matisyahu killed, but this was the act that actually awakened and lit the spark that brought, with God's help, the liberation of the land of Israel, because his sons and friends fell upon the Syrian officers and men and killed many of them, and the rest ran away. Afterwards they destroyed the altar. Matisyahu knew that Antiochus would be enraged when he heard what had happened. He would certainly send an expedition to punish him and his followers. Matisyahu therefore left the village of Modin and fled together with his sons and friends to the hills of Judea. All loyal and courageous Jews joined them. They formed legions and from time to time left their hiding place to fall upon enemy detachment and outposts and to destroy the pagan altars that were built by the order of Antiochus. Brave Jews from everywhere joined them to form a band of fighters. Hiding in caves, they came forward to make sudden attacks and then fled back to their hills and caves. When Matisyahu departed, his son Yehuda, the Maccabee, and the words Maccabee stand for the words Mi kamocha b'elim Hashem, who is as thou amongst the mighty Almighty God, which was their creed to recognize that it is only with the strength of God that they are able to go forward. His son, the son of Matisyahu, Yehuda, took command of the fighters. The Syrian soldiers were numerous and well trained, but they fought only for money. The Jews fought to live by the Torah. In guerrilla raids they attacked boldly, swiftly, until Antiochus had to send his general Apollonius with a full army. Seasoned warriors by now, the Jews defeated this army as Yehuda the Maccabee slew Apollonius, and from then on the general's sword was put to rest. That year the Syrian general Seron brought a new army, vowing revenge. Fierce in their faith in God, the Maccabees were able to overcome him at Beth Horon. A larger army with elephants and 3 generals came now from Syria, and slave traders went along to buy the captured Jews as slaves. But we know that they bought nothing, because Yehuda's fighters, who fought with faith in Almighty God, were victorious again. And then a 4th Syrian army came down upon Israel. And so badly was it defeated at Beit Sura that only remnants were able to return safely to the Syrian capital, and Antiochus sent no more armies, and from that time the people of Israel were liberated. Now when they came into the Beis Hamikdash, into the holy chamber, to repair and cleanse the holy temple of all the impurities, on the 25th of Kislev it was dedicated anew as the house of God. And at that time, as the golden menorah had been stolen by the Syrians, they made one of a cheaper metal. When they wanted to light it, they found only a small cruse of oil with the seal of the high priest Yochanan on it. It was sufficient to light only for 1 day. And the reason that they found such a small cruse was because then they sealed only that which was necessary for daily use. In other words, each and every day's needs separately. And although all were destroyed, but one little cruse was found, and it was necessary to have 8 days in order to produce sufficient oil, to have a continuance of the light of the menorah burning every night. But through a miracle of God, when they lit this, which they had, and it was supposed to burn only for 1 day, they found that there was sufficient oil even after having used it to burn for 8 days. And this miracle proved again that God had taken his people under his protection, and therefore we celebrate the period of Chanukah in our everyday existence today as an expression of an important event in Jewish life, which has its meaning even to our present day. Amongst the messages of the great and revered Rabbi of Lubavitcher, there is a message in which he speaks about Chanukah, and I'd like to bring the highlights to you because I think they are very important. And the Rebbe says, and I quote, that although Chanukah is celebrated only 8 days in the year, its content and message of the Chanukah lights are valid and compelling all year round. The message of the Chanukah lights contain 3 basic points which are applicable in an immediate and practical way to the crucial problems of our day. The Chanukah lights, which symbolize the light of the Torah and mitzvahs, are to be kindled after dark. This indicates that one should not be discouraged by the prevailing darkness outside, for even a little light of Torah and mitzvahs can dispel much darkness. How much more so a lot of light? The second thing, the Chanukah lights are required to be kindled in such a way that their light should be seen outside. This indicates that it is not enough to illuminate one's own home with the light and warmth of Torah through Yiddishkeit, but that it is necessary to spread it also outside in the neighborhood and in the community at large. The Rabbi goes on to say the third thing, the third basic point. The Chanukah lights are kindled in a growing number each night of Chanukah, because, as you know, we add a new lamp every evening. This indicates that Jewish teaching is to bring to our attention that we make a steadily growing effort to spread the light of Torah and mitzvahs, and that these efforts contain in themselves the assurance of ever-growing success. Our sages of the Talmud, the Rabbi continues, declare that the mitzvah of Chanukah lights must be shared by the women no less than by the men. because the women also contributed to the miraculous deliverance in those days at this season. The Jewish women are particularly credited with the self-sacrificing determination to safeguard the sanctity of the Jewish home and the chastity of Jewish womanhood. Nowadays, more than ever before, Jewish women and daughters should be aware of the special responsibility and everlasting privilege which divine providence has bestowed upon them by allotting to them a crucial and historic role in the preservation of the Jewish way of life on the foundations of the Torah and mitzvahs in daily existence. As the Akeres Habayis, the foundation of the Jewish home, the Jewish mother is largely responsible for the perpetuation of the very foundations of Jewish existence, the Taharas HaMishpocha, the purity of family life, the observance of Kashrus, the sanctity of the Shabbos and the Yom Tov, the education of the children, the whole setup of the home and of all the members of the household, to maintain the continuity of the Jewish way of life and the very existence of our Jewish people. And the Rebbe goes on to say that may the Chanukah lights, symbolizing the light of the Torah and mitzvahs, continuously every day and every moment, illuminate your personal life and the life of all the members of your family, so as to be a living and shining example to others. Let the light of the Torah and mitzvahs, infused with Hasidic glow and vitality, permeate every niche of your home and also illuminate the outside. And may it be God's will that all this should be accomplished in a growing measure. My dear friends, here we have the words of one of the greatest leaders in Jewish life, one to whom hundreds of thousands of Jews listen, one whose word is law. He is the one who says that the Chanukah brings to our attention three important matters: not to be afraid of the dark, not to confine ourselves to the insides of our religious home, and to advance in growing numbers. And the rabbi goes on to say that the Jewish mother, the Jewish wife, the Jewish daughter are the ones who were gifted by God with the great capability of being able to perform this in a very, very great measure of success. And this we have seen, that all the groups of Jewish women who have dedicated themselves to the observance of the Torah and mitzvahs have, with God's help, been very successful. I would venture to say, even more successful than men, because God has endowed the woman with the power of being the Akeres Habayis. And as the rabbi translates this, the foundation of the home. What is a foundation? It is the strength of the entire home. If the foundation is strong, then we can build the greatest and biggest edifice. If, however, the foundation is weak, then everything that is built in the house may crumble and turn into nothingness because the foundation has not been able to support it. In Jewish life, the mother and the daughter, the wife is the foundation, and being the foundation, upon the strength of her faith, upon her courage and determination to do what is right, to help her husband to do what is good, to encourage her children to go in God's way. This is the divinely endowed strength of that which God has given to the woman. And if woman uses her strength, she becomes the most remarkable and greatly praised member of the Jewish household, a household that sings the Eishes Hayil Miyimtza, a woman of valor who can find, for her price is above that of rubies. And the Yontif of Chanukah with the light in the home and outside the home, is a singing praise to the eternity of our people that has been assured by the blessed and remarkable ways in which our mothers were able to bring up these children. Our sages in the Talmud have asked the question, what is Chanukah? And they interpret that there was a miracle of light. And there were many people who thought at that time that the importance of the Chanukah was the military triumph over the enemy and the liberation of the Holy Land from the rule of the Greeks. Indeed, this was an important part of Chanukah, without which Chanukah could not have taken place. And that is why we thank God for the miracle of the triumph of the few over the many, the weak over the strong, as we state in the very special prayer of Al Hanissim, added in the Shmona Esra and in grace after meals. But really this is only the first step to the goal. The goal was to purify the Beis Hamikdash and to light the menorah. In other words, to sweep away the darkness of the Greek idolatry and the dark customs which have been forced upon the Jews and the Holy Land, and to spread the light of Torah and mitzvahs, the light of purity and holiness of the Jewish way of life. And this explains that when our sages spoke about the victory, they mentioned the wars only in passing, but great emphasis was placed on the miracle of the oil, because the main miracle was that a little of pure olive oil was found untouched by the Greeks, and that it lasted for 8 days until new pure olive oil could be prepared for the menorah. And this is symbolic that when a nation is under the rule and oppression of another nation, it naturally wishes to liberate itself and be free again. But the most important thing is not so much the newly won freedom in itself, but what the liberated nation does with its freedom. To the Jewish people, true freedom means freedom to live the Jewish way of life and the way of Torah and mitzvahs. The Chanukah, the miracle of Chanukah, was not complete until the menorah was rekindled again in a purified and sanctified Beis Hamikdash temple. The very name of the festival Chanukah means dedication, which is the sanctification of the Beis Hamikdash and the rededication of the Jewish people to Torah and mitzvahs, even in our day as well. And so, my dear friends, on this night of Chanukah, the third night, I say to each and every one of you, a happy Chanukah, and may the light of the Chanukah lamps be with us, and give us the strength and courage with which to go into the future, carrying the banner of the past, which called out and said, Mi Lashem Elai, as Matisyahu cried, whoever is unto God, let him come to me, to be united under the banner of the Eternal, which is the most sure way to the true peace and comfort and blessings in life. Thank you, and a happy Chanukah to you all.